Yeah, speaking about investigative reporting.
Speaking of investigative reporting, yes.
Sudbury looking at how stormwater is generated.
Well,
This is
the reason why we're laughing is, I don't know, it just doesn't
kind of
sound
a
like one of
boring
those
story,
headlines that, tonight on the 6 o'clock news. And
you
I
can
got to
make
watch.
it's a mountain out of a molehill in a way. But,
Yeah.
molehills create stormwater.
It all costs money, though. And if you're a taxpayer,
does.
you might want to be interested in how your money is spent. And it actually does affect your day-to-day life. If you're in an area that gets flooded, or you're worried about the quality of your drinking water, let's say, or, because water management is a huge deal in a city, especially like ours, with a lot of rock and whatever, and so many lakes, and you want to make sure that, our methods are environmentally friendly and things like that. So having said all that, let's hear about the stormwater situation.
Think it's that time of year where we become very aware of stormwater because it's in our basement.
A lot of times, or some of us, correct?
Just a little jab.
Yeah.
But
is it in your basement?
I haven't checked. I don't go in my basement very much. I do have everything, set up there, so if there is water, it's all
taken
good.
care of, yeah.
But usually I like to check. So it says the City of Greater Sudbury has extended its public consultation on stormwater management and who is charged for it.
Okay.
You want to make a guess who's charged for it?
Who's charged for stormwater management, or just water management?
It's you and I, by the way.
And
we're paying for it. Yes. So stormwater is the rain or snowmelt that falls on the ground, hard surfaces, and it ends up in city systems. So this is the water that does not soak into grass or natural landscapes. Right now, the city confirms it is reviewing who is actually paying for that. So 70% of stormwater fees are paid for by residential properties. But what they found through the investigation is about half or 50% of stormwater is generated from commercial, industrial, and institutional properties. So that's not, there's a little bit of a discrepancy there.
So the numbers, you're a numbers guy, so break that down a little bit.
Probably overpaying by about half.
You mean
in residential fees.
So we're covering a little bit of the commercial fees, is what you're saying, or the commercial usage, we're covering a little bit of that?
Yeah, and I don't have exact figures but let's say the budget is, $10 million. So instead of paying 5 between all the households in Sudbury, we're paying 7. Which would have to be picked up by commercial or industrial properties. And that makes sense if you think about it, because most people, unless you live in Gatchel, most people have grass on their lawn, so it will absorb quite a bit of water. But if you have like a pavement, large pavement surface, almost none of it is going to be absorbed.
Correct.
So all that's going to be runoff, and that's what stormwater is.
So the summary of that is that maybe they'll have to figure out a way to make it more fair from industrial, commercial to residential, who is paying for the usage if you wanted to pay for what you used.
Exactly, or what you generated. Yeah. So one of the proposed
not
changes,
what you used, but what you generated, correct.
One of the proposed changes is to include tax-exempt properties like churches and schools, and making them subject to stormwater fees.
Well, churches, I'm sure, have some type of,
They have roof, driveway, parking lots, and that's where the runoff comes from. So
churches, and what was the other one you mentioned? Schools, yeah. For all schools. And they take up a little chunk of land, usually, schools, right?
Absolutely.
But doesn't that eventually trickle down to us anyways?
Well, that was kind of our joke.
I know.
When we were reading this over before the show, is that if it's a non-profit or a tax-exempt,
comes right back in.
Isn't that just paid by us anyway?
So, you might as well just leave them the way they are. And
but I mean, there's an argument to be made for that. Like, if you make a business pay for that, isn't that just passed on to the people that pay for this?
Not necessarily
services?
Business, but not for profit. Yes, if it's taxpayers' money, it's a direct. I know a lot of businesses that'll take a hit for things, and they're not always.
They don't always pass it on.
Passing every little thing on, depending, and sometimes they pass more on. They pass more of the costs onto their customers.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember being, it's an excuse sometimes. Let's say gas prices go up. That could be an excuse for a business to up prices, but more than what the gas costs are for the business, just because you have an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason for inflation, because everyone's
happened for sure.
jumping on the bandwagon, just increasing costs for everything. But yeah, for the most part, that's an unknown.
Between that and shrinkflation, just like charging the same for a smaller product.
Yeah, like McDonald's over the years,
It's
the
like
Big
a
Mac.
compounded.
It's become the medium Mac and become the slightly between small and medium Mac and then mini Mac.
Still big, though.
But they call it Big Mac, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's shrinkflation. A little
Shrinkflation.
economic education.
And in the box of cereal or whatever, you only have.
Yeah, that one's really noticeable.
It starts to get,
the box
a little
of
bit
cereal
at the
getting
bottom
smaller.
of the box, yeah, but it costs the same.
Yeah. So instead of, raising the cost and giving you a shock, they just put a few grams less of product in there. Which I think is, maybe that's more palatable for people.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another way around inflation or prices going up for your product. That it's all perception from the public kind of thing, right? But once they catch on and they don't, and they demand it to be different,
Mm-hmm.
then the businesses have to do it differently and find ways to, and then ultimately raise the price because things cost money.
Sure. And I don't want to divert. Speaking of water diversion, I don't want to topic divert too much, but
good one.
Especially Southern Ontario, people have told me that our property taxes are pretty high here in relation to the value
of what we
have.
Yeah.
Which surprised me because if anything, I thought Southern Ontario would be more, like their property taxes would be more expensive. And I guess there must be a rationale for that, thinking we have to cover more infrastructure between us.
With less people.
With fewer people. So there is an argument to be made there.
Yeah. But again, it is true. We do pay more. But we do have a better quality of life too on top of that. So I guess it's you have to weigh out the pros and cons. We don't spend an hour to 2 hours a day one way to work in traffic and coming home.
So maybe that's worth a few $100s.
Yeah. But we do have, again, and I know I have a friend who works closely with the city, and I've asked him this a few times, and he says we have the most mileage or kilometers of road per capita than pretty much anywhere else in Canada.
Sure. No, I believe it.
So there's a lot of road maintenance that we have because we have all these back roads and so many.
Which I love. I'm really
for sure
grateful for that.
Definitely, yeah. So again, that costs money, and so again, quality of living. If we want to just hop in our whatever we drive and go, it's only a 10-minute, 15-minute drive to nature, basically, from anywhere in the city, and do recreation, if you will, fishing, trails, things like that,
Mm-hmm. This stormwater story is bringing back memory from last week. We talked about the KEW, and one of the problems, I guess you could say, with that is the stormwater or runoff that it's going to generate.
So the Kingsway Entertainment District?
Yeah, sorry. Did I say KEW?
We could change the name right here. And just,
I was thinking Kitchener-Waterloo.
Yeah.
KED.
The KW Titans is what you're...
KED. Yeah, I was thinking of KW Titans.
Yeah.
Yeah, so KED, that was one of the, problems. That's why the city council is still kind of working through it. I think it seems pretty split on whether the project will...
Yeah, because of the infrastructure you're talking about, right? We're talking about...
it's a big project.
Water coming off of a huge parking lot like that isn't there currently. Now there is going to be a lot of pavement for the parking lot, and that water has to go somewhere.
It has to go somewhere.
So that's city infrastructure that has to be put in place. And, the argument is there is already a lot of it in place, and again, the debate is going back and forth. But like you said, they are divided on that still.
Sure.
But there's a new election coming up. There's an election coming up municipally. And I think a lot of this stuff will then
It's leading into that.
carry forward to some new players, some new actors in the saga of this, and they will then have a say, towards
That's believable.
what's happening. Will it make it even worse, more complicated, and then it goes on even longer? The future will tell.